Good morning, Pomfret. Your first chapel speaker's favorite superhero is Spider-Man. Your second chapel speaker's mom still has the contact of his kindergarten sweetheart's mom. And your third chapel speaker and their friends tried to make a time machine in 4th grade. Your chapel speakers today are Rafael Reyes IV, Lucas Liu, and Artemis Lisker. Enjoy.
Good morning, Pomfret. To put it simply, I've thought about this speech a lot. Every time I've walked into this chapel, my turn up here at St. George has paralyzed me. I think I've written the beginning part of the speech at least 100 times. To be honest, the main thing going through my mind while thinking about my speech was that I wanted it to be remembered. I questioned, what do I have to say? What do I have to talk about to do that? This was my mindset for the longest time, that I had to make something that other people liked. It took me a while to learn what this pattern of thinking was. What I now know is people-pleasing. The earliest I can trace this behavior back to is kindergarten. As a child, I lived in Claremont, California, a college town east of Los Angeles. I spent around 8.5 years there, and this is where I started and technically completed elementary school. I was one of around 30 students of color in an elementary school of 400. Everywhere I looked, everyone was different from me. Skin color, height, and interests were all things that were different. At this young age, my only thought was to make friends. And the first thing that I did was ask people what they liked. I asked my parents if I could watch shows that my friends liked, play games that they liked, and I even went to one of my friend's Taekwondo practices. At the time, I didn't know this was a problem, and I continued to do so. This was amplified once I moved from California to New York. I was in a new school, and I had to make new friends, so I did what I knew how to do. I adapted to them. Shows, games, books. I watched, read, and played just to fit in and relate. Finally, I came to Pomfret. I already knew what I needed to do. The first couple days of school, I asked what my friends liked. I watched new sports, listened to new music, and watched new movies, whether I liked them or not. I kept doing this until this past summer. Each summer up until this point, I felt sad and incomplete. I had many negative thoughts. People think I'm a creep. People think I'm weird. Maybe I'm better off alone. My mom offered therapy, but I refused, thinking that therapy was something that was negative. I spent hours in my room, alone, trying to play games, watch shows or sports, and doing basically anything to get my mind off this crippling sadness that I felt. Finally, my mom got through to me, and I tried therapy out for the first time. I spent many sessions zoning out, answering the therapist's questions mindlessly, until again, I felt that sadness creeping up on me. On my 5th therapy session, I asked my therapist why I felt this way. The first question she asked me was, "What do you do to recharge?" I thought of all the default responses I had to this question, playing video games, reading, but they weren't quite true. Those were things that I did to calm down, but they just didn't feel like me. My therapist told me to come back to it at the end of the session. The end of the session came, and I still couldn't think of a true answer. The sadness continued. I tried to keep it to myself this time, trying not to tell my parents, but after a while, I couldn't hold it in anymore. One day, on a car ride, with a tear rolling down my cheek, I told my dad about the sadness that I felt. I explained how I felt and that I couldn't quite pinpoint why I felt this way. The first thing he told me is, "You're very similar to me when I was your age. We act like chameleons." I was confused. "What does it mean to be a chameleon?" I asked. He explained, and there I sat, a new outlook on the situation. Now you all may be asking, what is a chameleon? Chameleon is one who can change color to adapt to its mood and surroundings. At first, I had no idea how to connect this to my speech, but no less than 3 weeks ago, I stumbled upon a classic children's novel, The Mixed-Up Chameleon, written by Eric Carle in 1975. I first read this book in my kindergarten art class, where I learned how Eric Carle used hand-painted pieces of paper to form his famous art. At the time, it seemed like such a silly story. A chameleon who wishes to be other animals, gets hungry, and then wishes to turn back into himself to eat. A few weeks ago, when I finally figured out what I wanted to write about, the story came up, and I thought it fit perfectly. The story of The Mixed-Up Chameleon is about a chameleon who lives the same dull life every day. One day, he discovers a zoo with all these different animals who are all special and unique. Left and right, he goes wishing to be them, gaining their attributes. He wishes to be like a flamingo, like a giraffe, and even like a fish. At the end of the story, he gets hungry and tries to eat a nearby fly, of course unsuccessfully. He was so mixed up that he couldn't even feed himself. This is when he realized the importance of being oneself, and finally wishes to be himself again. The wisdom encapsulated in this kid's story, or as my dad would like to call it, the motif, is to realize that you should not change yourself because there's no life like yours. After I talked to my dad that night, I sat in my room thinking. As I sat and thought, I realized how important it was to be oneself. There's a character in one of my all-time favorite movies, The Dead Poets Society. Neil Perry is an intelligent man, a student at Welton Academy. He's what many would describe as a natural leader and is very enthusiastic about everything he does. To put things simply, he's so unapologetically himself. However, this is conflict throughout his story. His father, a controlling man, wants him to follow a conventional path to becoming a doctor, telling Neil to eliminate the things that he loves in life so that he can focus solely on his studies. Now, I apologize to anyone who hasn't watched the film because I'm about to spoil it. This control that his father places upon him eventually leads to Neil Perry taking his own life. So once again, there I sat, thinking. I thought about how quickly I am to change myself for others, to fit in. Then I thought about how much Neil loved being himself. So much so that when he couldn't be himself, he thought that his life was not worth living anymore. This moment was a turning point in my mind. I realized how important it is to be myself, to be true to myself and not let the opinions of others dictate how I live. So here I am today, trying to be the true, authentic me. My name is Rafael Reyes IV. I enjoy watching baseball, football, and soccer. I like romance movies and drama shows. I enjoy reading science fiction novels. I'm a listener, and I love to be there for people. Now, if you sit here and take away from my speech that you should never take other people's suggestions, that's the completely wrong message. Because if I hadn't tried all these new things, I would have never watched or played baseball, never would have found out that I like rom-coms, and most importantly, would have never reignited my love for soccer. Long story short, while it can be good to be a chameleon, it's more important to be yourself. In the wise words of Jermaine Cole, love yours. Now for my gratitudes. To Professor, Coach Lyon, Coach Hemphill, Coach Blasseman, Coach Erzik, Ms. McMahon, the Fishers, Pablo, and Miss MG, you all have been essential for my time here at Pomfret, and my journey would not be any what the same without you. To the Horse Advisory, thank you for making Tuesday nights the best nights of my week. There's no group of people I'd rather play taboo with. To the Horse, your patience with me has been one of the things that I am most grateful for, and I do not know what I'd do without you both. To my friends, you guys have been the staples of my time here. From days in Clement to now nights in the Tuck, I would never trade the times we've had together. Thank you all. To my grandparents, you all provided me with so much support throughout my life. You all have taught me lessons that are irreplaceable, and for that, I'm grateful. I love you. Now, in my life, I consider 5 people my brothers. Now, you all may be thinking, man, this family had 6 kids? No, thankfully not. First, to Seth and Owen. You guys have always been there for me. Through every stage of life at Pomfret, I'm proud to call you both some of the most important people in my life, my brothers. Thank you both. Love you. To Josiah, Big 1-3, J Boogs, you have taught me some of the most valuable things in my life, and even though some of those conversations were hard, I know you always got my back, and I got yours. Love you, Saya. To Zavi, you always find a way to make everyone laugh, whether saying a random remark during a movie, doing some dance, or finding something new to break around the house. In all seriousness, you're one of the most creative minds I know. You see the world in a different way, and I encourage you to keep seeing the world in the same creative, vibrant ways you always do. I love you. To Gio, I know I'm always the hardest on you. You are such a compassionate person. You understand when a person is happy or mad. I was an only child for 5.5 years, but those 5.5 years were the worst years of my life because I didn't have you in it. I love you. To my mom, even though we argue sometimes, I will admit that you are always right, and maybe I should listen sometimes. Thank you for supporting me in everything I do and believing in me to do my best when no one else would. I love you so much. Finally, to my dad, Padre. I'm standing up here today because of you. You have always been my role model throughout my life, setting the example at every stage of life. Your willingness to support me but also put me in my place when I am wrong is something that I truly appreciate. From sitting down on the couch to watch Star Trek, or going to Barnes & Nobles, or even taking a walk in the park, some of the best times I've ever spent in my life are with you. I'd be lucky to be a fraction of the man you are. I love you. My name is Rafael Reyes IV, and I'm a 4-year senior here on the Hilltop. Thank you, Pomfret.
Good morning, Pomfret. As an actor, athlete, and a nerd, I've always believed courage is the highest virtue of mankind. Inspired by one Greek mythology story, the fall of Icarus. Icarus crafted wings from waxed feathers. His dad warned him not to fly too low, the ocean would dampen his wings, not too high, or the sun will melt them. Yet he didn't limit himself in the middle. He reached towards the sun and fell as he regretted with terror. When I first learned this story in Ms. V's Inferno class, my takeaway was to pay attention to what Dad has to tell me. But now, if I were to be Icarus, I will laugh as I'm falling, because that's how I know that I was flying. Ultimately, we're not Icarus, and we have more than one chance to touch the sky, especially in Pomfret. No matter how intelligent, talented you are, I believe everyone should have the guts to try and fail. That's my first piece of courage. The hard truth is, if you're not trying, if you're not failing, you're not even trying. I didn't plan to stand here and give my chapel talk. In fact, Pomfret was not my first choice. It was my only one. I performed poorly on my standardized exams and had few extracurriculars. All my top choices deferred me. It is impossible to live a life that goes perfectly into your plan. Even after I arrived here in the sophomore year, I scored just about 500 on the English section of the PSAT. You get 200 points if you write your names on it. Junior year, I improved to 600 points, still far away from my target school range. I thought testing was not for me, especially being raised in a Chinese public school for 15 years. Yet finally, I got a 1520 on my October SAT. It would not be possible without every small active decision I made each morning. Distinguish noise from priority. And I have come to realize that today is hard, tomorrow is harder, but the day after tomorrow will be beautiful. When life burns, that's when the interesting parts of your story begins. Embrace that and keep fighting. I'm here to show you that I learned this language 4 years ago. Yeah, I scored in the top 2% of this nation. If I can do it, you can do it. The second kind of courage I really cherish is staying true to my evolving self. We have changed, are changing, and will continue to change. A wise man once told me, be honest with yourself. Acknowledge your process of growing, and don't rush, but don't procrastinate neither. I often picture myself as a sapling. I never cut my branches to look like another tree. It's frightening to live a life without knowing who you are, to let others' perceptions define you. Your branches can bear valuable figs, but every time you let others' judgments act for you, you trim that sapling ever so slightly. Over time, those branches will lose their potential to bear fruit. In becoming who I am today, many of my tiny branches have grown unexpectedly strong. Their fruits are really fulfilling. I choreographed a dance piece, became an actor, and even a not-too-terrible football player. But letting those branches grow hurt. I've lost touch with people who once meant a lot to me, even a romantic one. And I've been puzzled why my growth seems to separate them from me. I still treat them genuinely, but I no longer live or change for them. I've recognized my sapling is a complete being. I don't need to seek anything complimentary for it. I simply appreciate the growing process and every emotion it brings me, suffering or happiness. The benefits? People who truly recognize and support your growth will stop by, and you too will be in awe of how beautiful their saplings are. I've accepted that I would rather lose people than to lose myself. Because in the end, one of the greatest courage is to keep becoming who you truly are and appreciating the gentle process of your growth. My last piece of courage is to embrace your scars and let them shine. One of my favorite forms of pottery is kintsugi. It's a Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with golden colored glue. The once broken pieces now come together, forged into something even more beautiful. It shines with radiant golden vines. Be like that bowl. Embrace your wounds and integrate them into who you are today. They're more beautiful than you would ever believe. I will share a vulnerable story now, because life takes swings at everyone, and you're absolutely not alone in that. When I first arrived at boarding school in 8th grade, I was a quiet kid, because I didn't quite understand what everyone else was saying, let alone their slang. I stuttered when I tried to make friends, and people sometimes mocked me for it. Then I managed to get hand of this language in my sophomore year, practicing with my roommate Avery Bird on a daily basis. Slowly, things turned even better. I found mutual feelings and went on dates with a gorgeous white girl. We only spoke in English. For a while, I felt like I had finally settled, enjoying the teenage part of my life. But that wasn't the end of the story. When I asked if I could visit her family, she looked away and said, "You probably don't want to. My grandma doesn't like Asians." That moment left a wound open in my heart. Over time, it healed, but it still stings me ever so slightly. But as I share my story, I've truly embraced my scars, because I would rather not point fingers at and blame others when I'm hurt. I want to become stronger, successful on my own terms, so that I would not feel hatred when I look back now, but plain indifference to their impacts on me. Friends, I've come to believe that our strength doesn't come from where we come from. It comes from our courage. Let your scars shine. Now, I'd like to acknowledge the people who stopped and supported my growing sapling. Ms. Vitaliano, Ms. Cano, you are the two most wise mentors who I'm privileged to meet and be inspired. Mr. Wilson, your tender heart has given me warmth during the miserable days and softened my heart. Ms. Aragon, eres la humano más cariñosa y entusiástica que he conocido en esta comunidad. Your advisory is another family I found happiness in. Mr. Lam and Ms. Jolly, you are remarkable human beings whom I've come to respect and admire. I wish I'm 3/4 of a dancer and actor as you are. To my dearest friends, you know exactly who you are. Thanks kindly for staying with me and appreciating the gentle process of my growth. I love each one of you. 老妈、叔叔、大姨，没有你们我走不了这么远。谢谢你们在我最难、最颓废的时候一直支持我。外公外婆，小宝过得很好，也很想你们。To the one soul I've been missing, I hope next time we meet at the right time. Lastly, I would like to acknowledge someone who exemplifies courage, research on astronomy, and personalities never cease to impress me. So, James Tian, come grab my senior chair after chapel talk. Dear Pomfret, I offer you the courage to try and fail, to stay true to your evolving self, to embrace your scars and let them shine. So go out there, grow courageously, and shine your light. My name is Lucas Liu, and I'm a 3-year senior here at the Hilltop.
Good morning, Pomfret. I never really wanted to mention the process of writing this speech in my actual chapel speech, but I do think it's worth noting that I literally wrote this the night before. Whoops. Time management is not my strong suit, by any means. You'd think that by being a writer would mean that I wouldn't have too much of a hard time writing this speech, except I wasn't sure what I wanted to talk about in the first place. What I did know was that I wanted to give the speech that I wanted to hear last year as a new Pomfret student, but that only narrows it down so much. Anyway, here's my attempt. Last year was hard, not only because I was starting a new school, but a pretty drastically different one too. While I was going from one boarding school to another, my old school was therapeutic. My old school also had about only 150 students total. So Pomfret was a whole new experience in a way. The academics were so much harder than I was used to, and the culture was very different. I didn't feel like I fit in, and I felt like I had to change myself if I wanted to do that. So I tried to change. I started dressing a little differently and trying to fit the mold of whatever I thought I was supposed to be. Eventually, late last year, I stopped doing that. I stopped caring what other people thought about me because, truly, there are more important things in the world. That didn't mean things were smooth sailing from there. It was pretty rocky, and if anything, it still is. Regardless, I'm doing much better than last year, the year before, and the year before that. I've also learned a lot of lessons along the way, so here's some of what I've learned. Things generally turn out okay. While it might not necessarily look or feel that way in the moment, it gets better. There will always be negative things, and there will always be positive things. Look for the positives. They're there, even if you can't see them. Things will be okay, even if it seems like everything is bad. Don't be afraid to mess up. Mistakes are learning opportunities. Things may not turn out how you expect them to. That's okay. Sometimes the path to where you want to go looks a little different than what you were anticipating, but you still reach the same end point. Took me a while, but I did learn that things not going how I expected them to was not the end of the world. I could still reach the goals I wanted to, even if I got there a little differently. Change is the only constant in life. I don't remember the first time I heard someone say that, but it's been echoed around constantly the past few years. Change is inevitable. You have to actually put in the work if you want things to change. You can't wait for a moment for everything to fall into place. You have to start yourself. Nothing changes if nothing changes. Instead of waiting for a wake-up call, be the wake-up call. Don't wait for a perfect opportunity. Start now. I'd like to thank the people who have gotten me to this point. To my teachers, coaches, and dorm parents, thank you for putting up with me. I'd like to especially thank Mrs. Jones for waking me up in the morning sometimes, to Ms. Pina for our really, really late night talks at like midnight, to Coach Steve for all of the very random conversations we've had, and to Coach Stith, even if you ditched me as an advisor, sort of. To Dr. McCarter for the best advisor I could ever ask for. Thank you for always believing in me, even if I didn't always believe in myself. To my friends, thank you. You guys make the experience as fun and meaningful as it is. To my parents, thank you so much for everything. Mom, thank you for taking care of my boys. Thank you for just everything you've done. Dad, thank you for introducing me to hockey. Thank you for both of you, for the long drives here to and from Pomfret. You guys mean so much to me. To Ethan, thank you for coming. I know you didn't want to, and I had to convince you last night, but thank you for coming anyway. You're a great little brother, even if you can be a pain at times. I love you. I hope you know that. To Tommy, I hope you know how much you mean to me. I love and miss you. I'm Artemis Lisker, and I'm a 2-year senior here on the Hilltop. Thank you.
Good morning, Pomfret. I sometimes say that this is my favorite place on campus, and I say that because of the courage that is so often on display here. And I can't think of a better example of people taking full opportunity to share authentically about who they are, their personal struggles, and their triumphs than today. That's courage, that's bravery, and the openness to sharing about those journeys is what makes this community and this space so remarkable. We are tight on time, but I would be remiss if I didn't remind you that we have a dinner tonight. Our schedule is slightly adjusted, so we have a little bit of daylight to practice and get ready. The dinner tonight, we're in uniforms, lots of Pomfret gear, just as we are right now. We look forward to that and to our pep rally and the parade. And by noon, we will learn whether or not we can hold the bonfire because of the winds, so stay tuned for that. With great gratitude to our senior speakers, to Raf, to Lucas, and to Artemis, please lead us out into this beautiful day.